And for more on all of this, and not just what the former president is saying tonight, but also what could happen going forward, I want to bring in criminal defense attorney David Markus, who recently succeeded in defending, we should note, the former Florida Democratic gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum, also recently turned down a job to defend the former president in this case that's happening here that we're talking about tonight. Tell us why. Why did you not want to take on this case?
You know, I can't really talk about that particular thing, Caitlin. I can talk about the circus that was brought to town, the roosters and the chickens and the cats that are around. It's been wild, and the heat and the humidity that you guys are putting up with. But trying to stay away from talking about the specifics of that.
Well, in a bigger, broader sense, I've talked to some attorneys about this today, the pros and cons of taking this on. Obviously, it's a historic case. You'd be representing the first time a former president has ever faced federal charges. What do you see as the cons of representing?
You know, it's a full-time job. That's number one. And so any lawyer who takes the case needs to make sure they have enough time, enough energy to devote their entire practice to it. And so if you have a busy practice, if you're trying cases all around, it's going to be hard to turn away those cases, to tell the current clients, listen, I'm going to be spending all my time on this. That's a difficult thing for a lawyer to do and to get involved with.
Is it complicated by what we saw happen tonight, where Trump leaves here, he gets on his plane, he goes back to Bedminster, and he delivers a speech that I'm told his current attorneys reviewed, where he said he had, every right to take these documents. He said, I did everything right, and they indicted me. How much does that complicate a search for an attorney?
You know, I don't think it does all that much. A person should have the right to defend themselves in public. I think what's much more interesting is why nobody's criticizing Jack Smith for getting out in front of the public the night after the indictment, having a press conference like a peacock with the American flag behind him and saying the public should read the indictment and make a decision for themselves. That's wrong. A judge is going to instruct the jury not to make a decision based on the indictment, to wait for the proof. So I'm not sure why Jack Smith did that. I'm not sure why prosecutors are holding press conferences. I think it's unseemly, and I think it's wrong. So
it's interesting for you to say that, because what we had heard as we were covering it in the immediate aftermath of learning that Trump was indicted was the silence from the Justice Department and the fact that Trump himself was the one framing the narrative of what had happened, and we weren't hearing anything from the Justice Department. Isn't that just as problematic?
Right. Well, Trump beat him to it, as Trump is apt to do. But Jack Smith held a press conference, maybe, too late for the media, but why is he holding a press conference at all? It is odd, right? He had a speaking indictment, what I've called a show and tell indictment with pictures and everything. That should speak for itself. It's weird that a prosecutor will get in front of the camera and sort of preen about, we want a speedy trial. Government doesn't get a right to a speedy trial.
But don't you have a right to a speedy trial as a person? Is that preening about a speedy trial?
Yeah, so the defendant has a right to the speedy trial under the Constitution, under the Sixth Amendment, not the prosecutor. So for the prosecutor to say, we want a speedy trial, well, I think that was just for the cameras, because he doesn't have a right to a speedy trial. Only a defendant does. And so this case is going to take a long time.
You don't think he was saying that in the interest of the Republican frontrunner that they are investigating, saying that's why he should have a speedy trial?
No, I don't think he was looking out for Donald Trump when he said we should have a speedy trial. Donald Trump's lawyers should have the opportunity to prepare. The government's been investigating this case for 2 years. They've been putting this case together. Trump's going to have a new legal team. They need time. It's only fair, right, that they have the same amount of time to prepare. There's no chance that this case gets tried before the election. I'm telling you, it will not get tried before November 2024.
One thing I should also note about what we heard from Jack Smith, it wasn't, I'm very sensitive to this as a member of the press. It wasn't a press conference because they didn't take questions. It was, he came out and delivered a very brief statement. When you see, though, the former president repeatedly attacking Jack Smith, I mean, if you scroll through his Truth Social feed, he calls him deranged. He calls him a Trump hater. He attacks his wife.
Not right. I mean, clearly not appropriate. Nobody should be name calling. So Trump shouldn't be doing that. Nobody's going to defend that. But I do think we should be asking questions about why Jack Smith is on air making those kinds of comments also.
Well, he doesn't speak very often. That was the first time we had heard from him. I will note, we did see him today, of course. We didn't see him, but he was in the courtroom today. I know the cameras in the courtroom is something that you care a lot about as well. We'll have to leave it there, though.
Sure.
We're out of time tonight.
Sure.
David, thank you very much, though, for joining us here in Miami. Appreciate that. Abby, back to you.
All right, I want to bring in Democratic